Welcome to Leading Edge Conversations, empowering corporates, financial advisors, and retirement fund members with insights that matter. Brought to you by Liberty Corporate Benefits, this series dives into the future of employee benefits, regulatory strategies, and financial empowerment. Thought Leadership Amplified. Tune in and stay ahead. Hello and welcome to Leading Edge Conversations, proudly brought to you by Liberty Corporate Benefits. My name is Nontuthuko Mhlungu, and on today's episode, we're going to be having an important conversation about why women need to start talking about wealth unapologetically. I'm feeling a little bit attacked already. Here to help us unpack this important issue, we've got John, Olivia, as well as Melissa. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having
me. All right, let's start with a statistic that completely knocked the wind out of my sails. According to the latest Oxfam report, which was released in Davos last year at the World Economic Forum, it was found that men own 105 trillion more wealth than women. And this is a global figure, of course. And so what does this mean for us, and particularly in South Africa, where 42% of households are headed by women? What's causing this disparity? What are we not getting right, John?
Fundamentally, Noni, what's happened is women have started further back at the starting line. So you have the situation where women until the 1970s in many countries couldn't open up a bank account or purchase property in their own name without the consent of their husband. Okay, so under those conditions, the factors which allow women to create wealth were just not in place until 40, 50 years ago. And that's naturally going to create a situation where women are further back straight out of the blocks.
Sure, that's quite astounding. And you would think that a lot has been done in recent years to close this gap, but it seems like it's just widening more and more. Melissa, do you want to add to that?
Yes, so I recently read an article about the pay gap between men and women, and that also exacerbates the gap between earning power and wealth generation for men and women. So women, when they get married and have children, tend to take jobs that are closer to home so that they can sort out any issues with the children. But the jobs that are closer to home are with smaller companies and less paying. So there's even a term for it, Noni. It's called the motherhood penalty now.
Tell me a little bit more about this motherhood penalty.
So when you're a mom, are you a mom?
Not yet.
When you're a mom, you realize that the kids, my kids, for example, don't even remember that they have a dad when they are in trouble. So the first parent that is called is generally the mom. Whether the mom is an executive worker, whether the mom is an office worker, the first parent that is called is a mom. So the mom is generally the one that has to be close to home. And in order to be close to home but also work, you have to take what is available. And unfortunately, that contributes to the gap that we have.
It's quite fascinating. And I guess this makes it important for women to be financially dependent. And maybe just to add on to that, why is it important for women to have financial independence today?
Fundamentally, women need to be in a position that they can have that independence so that they have some sort of freedom to make financial decisions for themselves, for them to be able to take a strategy through their life that best suits them. And that can mean something as innocuous as just allowing them to be able to purchase things for themselves, own things in their own name, go about their own life. But it can be as important as making sure that women have a way out of very, very dangerous and difficult situations, which previous generations of women would have found very difficult to do.
So are you saying that women are staying in situations that they shouldn't be in because they're financially dependent, perhaps on a spouse? Is that what we're seeing playing out?
That's what we've seen play out for generations, and I think it still happens today, where women are stuck in unloving and even dangerous situations because they don't have the financial means, or they feel they don't have the financial means to break free of that situation. And in a country with the level of gender-based violence that South Africa has, it's a tragedy, it's a crisis, and that we don't see enough women able to break free and sticking in situations that are hazardous for them just because they don't have the financial wherewithal to break free.
It's rather unfortunate. It reminds me of a quote, I think it was by Cher. She said, become the CEO your parents told you to marry, or something like that. Become the CEO so that you can be with the person you want to be and not be with them out of financial independence. So I think that kind of lends itself to that. Olivia, let's bring you into the conversation now. What is wealth? What does it really mean? I know there's different definitions and people differentiate between wealth and being rich. What is the definition of wealth?
You know, from a young age, well, I see it in my friend groups, a lot of the boys are taught to invest and build your wealth. And, you know, it's actually to take what you have today and, you know, leverage off what you have today to one day have much more than you thought. But girls, I still hear it more than it with boys that, girls are saving and budgeting, but not actually speaking about building their wealth.
So, yes,
If I can add on, I think what I noticed is that when you are younger, as a boy growing up, your parents encourage you to look for career paths that are going to provide for family. Your job as a young man is you need to be able to provide for your family in a bigger context. And you naturally pushed in the direction of jobs and careers which will hopefully be wealth creating. Whereas I even just saw in my own situation where my sister, on the other hand, it was less of a concern. You know, follow a career path regardless almost of the financial position that it might leave you within. And that's something that I think not enough people are paying attention to the future progress that they might make in that space.
I was actually telling John that, you know, that's a sort of similar thing that happened in my family. I was encouraged to follow my passion, and that's actually such a great thing because these days so many kids are pressured into a career that they actually have no interest in. I was actually quite lucky because my passion was maths, which led me to entering and opening doors to a well-paying field. So yeah, I think, as John said, girls are often not warned that passion doesn't always pay.
Doesn't pay. That's a whole other can of worms. And we're not going to open up today. Yes, Melissa, you want to add on to that?
Yes, I have a different story or different experience. So as a child growing up, my dad, he was a very complex man. So he would often say things like, the men will make the decision on this. As karma would have it, he was blessed with 2 daughters and no sons. So the messaging that my sister and I got was that in order for you to get out of the township, you need to study one of these top careers that John mentioned earlier, and you need to work hard and you need to be the best at it. Then you are going to get out and you're going to be able to look after yourself. And I often quote my dad, he's late now, in so many pieces of advice that he gave me. But the one piece of advice that I often quote more to people that he gave to my sister and I was that you should never rely on a man. You cannot rely on a man. The only man that you should actually be relying on is me, because I'm your dad. And, you know, even though my sister and I are married to wonderful husbands, we've got that independence foundation. We know that we have a runaway fund, which we will talk about later. But to John's earlier point of the levels of gender-based violence that we have in South Africa, there was a report that said 1/3 of women in South Africa over the age of 18 are impacted by gender-based violence. That's over 7 million women in our country. And we need to help them to be able to break free from these situations.
Why do you think women feel shame or there's some stigma attached when a woman expresses her desire for wealth or ambition or success? Where do you think that comes from, and how can we start to change that?
Yeah, so the point is, if you're working hard, why shouldn't you be proud of saying, yes, I do like money. Money does make the world go round, and it makes life easier when you have that power to be able to leave a situation or to do whatever you want, to buy whatever you want. You're not relying on someone else to do it for you.
And so perhaps as an add-on to that, we know that the unemployment rate is soaring at the 45%, I believe it is now. And so it's quite a delicate balance for a young woman in particular. Olivia, maybe you can comment on this. Coming into a place of work, wanting to assert her worth and her value and wanting to negotiate without seeming ungrateful. There's almost a resistance to negotiating because you think, oh, well, they're going to think I'm being greedy. Let me just take the first offer. Let me not negotiate. Let me not ask because I need this job. So how does one balance that dynamic?
Yeah, this is something that I found quite difficult 2 years ago when I was applying for a job because, firstly, I don't really have a lot of role models in corporate. And so I relied on a lot of friends for advice regarding salaries and salary negotiations. And it can all be quite overwhelming because, firstly, people also have different definitions of their salary. Some people refer to their cost of company, whereas others refer to their net salary. And it's easy to then feel like, oh, I got a very low offer, but you're actually not comparing apples with apples. And then, as you said, with the high unemployment rates, it's very difficult to not just feel grateful for the opportunity and accept the first offer that comes.
At the end of the day, I think that men get away with the fact that we're allowed to be assertive. We're expected to be assertive. And on the other hand, if a woman comes forward a bit strongly or a bit assertively, they immediately label that they're ungrateful or they, pushing the boundaries.
She's an ice queen.
She's an ice queen.
All sorts of
labels. All sorts of labels.
Yes.
And I think that's where we need to change that stigma because we will persist in seeing that gap that we mentioned at the outset around women still lagging in terms of wealth creation if we don't level the pace at which we're getting moving forward from here at least.
And so that means, John, we should have more men on this panel as much as we have women because, yes, we're having conversations with women. We have these conversations during International Women's Day. We're going to have it again in August. But Liberty has these conversations all year round and real change is happening. But it's important to bring men into the conversation as well because that's where that likability factor stems. We want to be liked rather than respected.
Correct. It's about removing that blind spot that I think a lot of the fellow gents that I talk to have, where you think that just because you have women sitting in the same office as you doing what you perceive to be the same job, and you think, well, that gap is gone. Well, guess what? That gap isn't really gone when you dig deeper into it, and it's about constantly reassessing and being aware of the lay of the land and the progress that is being made or not made.
Melissa, do you want to jump onto that?
Yes, Noni. So I think women in general, whether you're just starting out your career or unemployed or even in corporate, we feel uncomfortable to try and negotiate or ask for more because of the likability trap, because we don't want them to think that we are greedy. But when I was 10 years old, my first job was pro bono as a gachi. You know what a gachi is?
No, please tell us.
It's the person that collects the money because my father owned and drove a minibus taxi. So it's the person that collects the money from the passengers. And by the time I was 10 years old, I was able to negotiate with adults how much the fare was because people would always come in and try to take a chance. I learned from my dad how to sweet talk my way out of a ticket. That is a life skill. And I was able to cut queues and like a pro at that age. And another lesson that my father taught me was that you should know your worth. You should ask for what you want because if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. What's the worst that can happen if you ask? They can say no, or they can negotiate with you, or they can say yes. We tend to think always about the negative things that can happen. We never think about what the positive things that can happen is. So yes, it's uncomfortable to negotiate and to ask for more, and it's the discomfort. But part of growing is sitting and pushing through the discomfort. So it's uncomfortable, do it uncomfortably.
Do it uncomfortably. And I like that part she said about worth. If you don't know your worth, someone else is going to tell you because you also don't know what your worth and your value is. Olivia, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I think it's so important, as Mel said, to know your worth and to learn the skill of negotiation, whether it's through family members or maybe even just doing your market research or speaking to friends. Because, when I was applying for jobs, I even got asked the question, what would I like to earn? And I thought, I don't know, and I think it's so important to actually know and to know your worth and to, have a bit of a ballpark number because if you say something too low, you're most likely going to get that number. And if you say something too high, that's the number they're going to work with.
Absolutely. Try and find a balance. They always say, once you say the word balance, that's it. Because if you start too far behind, it becomes really difficult to catch up later on because you've started too low. Perhaps let's go on to the next question. I'm going to throw this one at you, Olivia, sticking with you. How can women begin to leverage their current financial position, no matter where they are, whether through credit, investment, or saving? how can they start to build that wealth today? Someone is sitting and watching and thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think it's just so important to just start small. Start somewhere and start small. Even if it's just 200 Rand a month in a savings account, even in a tax-free savings account, a little bit can grow into a lot over time.
And don't forget that little bit will compound, and that means that you're going to get returns on top of the returns on top of those returns. So starting small is absolutely the right place.
Yeah, and I think you just get comfortable with the idea of saving and putting money away, and when you look again, you'll be putting more and more away, and yeah, you'll be very happy one day.
But realistically, let's talk about this before we move to the next question. A lot of South Africans, maybe not just women, are struggling to save. And I'm not saying it's an excuse for them not to, but it's real out there. The economy it's really tough. And so even if it's less than 200 Rand, I think you did mention it, Olivia, it's about getting into the practice of putting something away and not thinking that one day you're just going to wake up and win the lottery, right? It's a habit that you build. You have to, get into the habit of saving.
It can also just start from a very short-term goal. Yeah. So if you start saving and you know, I am saving towards something that I want to buy in 3 months' time, start there. And once you discover the benefit and the joy of that, you can build out to longer term.
Start to build, yes. Often you want to start with big things, right? And then we're discouraged and then we fall off the track.
Correct.
All right, and so sticking with you, how important is insurance in wealth creation? What role does that play?
It's critical, and it really is because of the fact that insurance enables a person to protect against unforeseen events. I mean, one prime example for me, especially for younger people and young women, is to protect your future earnings. If you are unable to work, your greatest asset is going to be those salaries or wages that you are going to earn into the future. So there are products, income protection space, that allow you to protect against the risk that for a temporary period or even permanently you're unable to work, you're unable to earn a salary, and you're able to supplement that in some way so that you don't totally forgo that in the event that you're unable to work going forward.
And as you move on with your life, when you start a family and you have children, income protection remains important, and then life cover becomes very much more important as well. So then you have that peace of mind that if something happens to you, the children are looked after, the other people that are depending on you financial are also looked after.
That is wealth too, right? It's that peace of mind, it's that freedom. It's not a grudge purchase as people often interpret it, but it's the peace of mind that things will be taken care of, right? Absolutely. All right, as we close, then I'd like to hear, sorry, Olivia.
And our numbers also show that women are less covered than men. When I was looking at our 2024 claim stats, we saw that 32% of the claims come from females. And we also had a look at our average claim amounts and our sum assureds, and they're all lower for females compared to men, except our credit life cover, which John actually gave me a good explanation of.
No, in general, credit life insurance is to protect in the event that you are unable to repay for a large purchase, a vehicle, a home. And probably the reason why females have got higher levels of cover, and that's the only space that they have a high level of cover, is because so few women are able to purchase vehicles and property in their own name, and hence you tend to find that's the place where there's higher cover.
Maybe just before we close, coming back to you, Olivia, what are some of the reasons that, there's lower coverage, you say, with women? You said 32%. What is the potential reason for that, if anything?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to, again, lower salaries. You're able to take out lower cover. Yeah, and maybe also some females actually being dependent on their spouse's cover.
I think also we tend to find that it's the execs and senior management that get higher levels of cover just relative to their salary, and the sheer fact that there's a limited number of women working in those higher echelons, you're going to see lower levels of cover in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe just again, lower levels of financial literacy, lower levels of knowing the importance of insurance, knowing what insurance products can do for you, lots of factors.
Absolutely. All right, in closing, and I'd like to hear from all of you, What is that one bold step that a woman can take today to begin to claim her financial independence, small or big? John?
It's about making sure that you are in a position that you appreciate that worth that you bring, and know that the only way you're going to break free of this is to be able to build something up that you can take that runaway fund with.
Yeah, and you know your worth and ask for it.
So if I can give our audience some tough love, Noni, stop waking up in the middle of the night thinking whether you bought the right strawberries or not. Start thinking about, how am I going to build this independence fund? Runaway fund, independence fund, whatever you want to call it. How am I going to ask for what I am worth? Yes, it makes me uncomfortable, but I'm going to be brave and I'm going to push through the discomfort.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your insights. And with that, I'd like to close with a quote that is apt in light of today's conversations. It is from former Deputy President of South Africa, Nomntuthuko Mhlungu. And she says, "We tell our girls they can be anything, but we don't teach them how to own what they earn, or that ambition is not arrogance. Women don't just need jobs, they need to own capital, lead companies and drive economies." And that is, of course, by former Deputy President of South Africa, Nomntuthuko. It's been absolutely insightful. From myself, Nontuthuko Mhlungu. Until next time, cheers.